I've recently been undertaking a course of cognitive behavioral therapy on the advice of my psychiatrist, and it involved writing an essay on the event that caused me to seek therapy in the first place. It's not something I ever planned on publishing or sharing with anyone, but it dawned on me that what happened might serve as a cautionary tale for others, and if just a little bit of light can come out of all that darkness, then I guess I should give you a chance to use it in one of your videos, Let's Read. That being said, I prefer to remain at least partially anonymous if you do share this, and if that's okay with you. If you think that makes my story less believable, I understand, but it's quite a big story where I'm from when it happened, and I'd rather not draw any more attention to myself than I already have. So back in the late 2000s, after earning my teaching qualifications, I got a job at a middle school in a major Midwestern city. Teaching turned out to be a career full of surprises. I was surprised how quickly I was able to land a job, surprised how horribly understaffed and underfunded we were, and surprised at the kids' capacity for sheer cruelty. I was swamped with work, incredibly stressed out, and admittedly very lonely. I wanted to date, I just didn't have the time. So when I heard about a little website called Plenty of Fish, my curiosity was piqued. I set up a profile, trying not to make my About Me section too cringy, then I set about browsing the profiles of local singles. There were a lot of attractive, interesting young women, an intimidating amount actually, but as much as I tried, I couldn't seem to hold their attention long enough to actually secure a meetup. But then finally, just when I was starting to think that the whole thing was just some lost cause, I got a message from a girl named Lyra. Lyra was a petite Hispanic girl with curly brown hair and big amber eyes. She was charming, intelligent, and we soon swapped email addresses for more in-depth conversations. She said that she was working as a waitress downtown, had an interest in fashion, but also read a lot of books that she was kind of embarrassed about. When I asked why, she didn't tell me in case I thought she was weird. At that point, very little could have put me off this girl, but she told me that she had a huge interest in serial killers. And I just about jumped for joy. Not only did I somewhat share her interest in criminology, but a kooky interest like that was something that we could really bond over. At least, that's the way it seemed to me at the time. We traded a few more pictures of each other, some a little racier than others, but nothing nude or X-rated or anything like that. I thought she was pretty. She said I was handsome, and before long, we were planning to meet in person. Between matching and the day of our planned meeting, Lyra and I talked almost all day, every day. We talked about our lives, our hopes for the future, our families, and dating history. I was almost 27 at the time, and she told me that she was 22, but despite the age gap, we got along very well, and I got more and more excited to meet her. We agreed to meet for coffee one Sunday afternoon, so I drove out to the parking lot of a Starbucks in her neighborhood, gave her a description of my car, and then waited for her to show up. We planned to meet for 2 p.m., but when 2:15 came and went and Lyra hadn't showed up, I started to get a little worried. I texted her, but she assured me that she was only minutes away, so I just leaned back in the driver's seat of my car and started playing with my phone to pass the time. I obviously wanted to be able to see who's approaching my car, so I'm backed into this parking space facing whatever strip mall the Starbucks was in. I can see anyone and everyone who might approach my car, but every time I look up from my phone, there's no sign of Lyra. Then at one point, I look up to see this guy walking towards the parking spaces where I'm at. There are other cars parked next to me, so I figure that he's just going to get into one of them before driving off. Only he doesn't. I see him stop in front of my hood on the edges of my vision, and so I look up again to make eye contact with him. The guy's maybe a few years younger than me, dark hair and eyes, and a little shaved beard and mustache combo around his mouth and chin. He sort of checks me out for a second, takes a look around him, and then pulls out a small digital camera from his jacket and starts snapping pictures of me. At first, I just gave him this exaggerated look as if to say, "What are you doing, dude?" But honking my horn didn't stop him either. I rolled down my window, intent on telling him to get lost, but as soon as I did, he makes a beeline for my driver's side and begins talking to me in a low voice. Strangely enough, I can remember exactly what he said, not word for word. I think he was only 2 or 3 sentences in before my head started swimming and I felt like I was going to throw up. It sounds exaggerated right now, I know, but you just wait. Basically, it went a little something like this. He addresses me by name, which is what initially stunned me into silence, and then he says something like, "I don't think you want to make a scene here. You don't want people to find out you've been talking to my 17-year-old sister, especially not the school board." Has anyone ever said anything to you that made your whole entire self just stop for a couple of seconds? The only other thing I can compare it to is when I got the news that my dad suddenly passed. It's like everything stops for a few moments. The world keeps going, but you're just stuck in that one moment longer than everyone else is. In movies and on TV, they try all kinds of things to mimic what it feels like. The first episode of Breaking Bad, for example, when Walter goes temporarily deaf when he gets the news about his cancer. TV producers try to capture that feeling in 1,000 different ways on 1,000 different TV shows, but they'll never really convey what it's like. You gotta feel it for yourself. And realizing that I've been tricked, catfished, if you will, into something that can destroy my entire life. Trust me, you don't want to know what that feels like. As you can probably guess, I hadn't been talking to any 17-year-old. I've been talking to the guy who was now demanding to be let into my car. Hell, I don't even know if this girl in the pictures was his sister or not, but we both knew that that wasn't important. All that mattered was what it looked like, and I know this guy could selectively screenshot a few portions of our email exchange to make me look very much like the predatory villain going after the innocent underage girl. It might sound strange to some. All I ever wanted to do was teach. I had an amazing high school history teacher who inspired me to do the same, so it might sound strange to some, but all I ever wanted to do was teach. I had an amazing high school history teacher who inspired me to do the same, so it might seem like an unambitious goal to some, but it's all I ever wanted as a career. My blackmailer knew that, and it made me a much richer target. They didn't have to mine enough dirt to hold the prospect of arrest and imprisonment over me because the school board would ensure that I never worked another teaching job in my life if there was even the whiff of predatory behavior about me. He had me by the proverbials, as they say. I knew it, and he knew it too. And then over the course of the next few weeks, he must have bled me for at least $1,000 before I finally got a grip of myself and went to the cops. Now, I won't bore you with each individual exchange. Just know that each one came with a reminder of what he had over me, and at the time, I didn't think that I had any real recourse. I fooled myself into believing that if I paid him a few times, if I just gave him that few thousand he believed that I owed him, that the guy would find a new mark and move on from me. But he didn't. The first rule of blackmailers, you never let them blackmail you. Otherwise, you'll never get rid of them. You let people use you like a human ATM, and shock and horror, they don't like the idea of suddenly losing it. One whiff that I was about to hold out on him and the guy threatened my life. After that, I had no choice but to either pack up and move or go to the cops. And after reviewing the conversations I had with Lyra, I decided to stand up for myself. For the first 2 weeks or so, I was too shell-shocked to actually take a step back and analyze what I'd said and done. I wanted to delete my Plenty of Fish account, sometimes more than anything in the world, but I was too scared and ashamed to even log in. But then, after I realized my life might legitimately be in danger if I suddenly became unable or unwilling to pay, it motivated me to revisit Lyra's conversation history. I wasn't talking to a 17-year-old girl. I mean, I wasn't even talking to a girl. I didn't even know if the girl in the pictures was underage, as there was no matches in the results of multiple Google image searches. And that was the start of me going down this major rabbit hole regarding blackmail and cybercrime. Every single self-declared expert said the same thing. Even if you legit have done something illegal, you have to be the first to approach law enforcement if you're being blackmailed. It sounds stunningly petty that it came down to something as simple as who files the first report, but justice is indeed blind, for better and worse. And when I actually sat down with 2 detectives who worked extortion cases like mine, they said it was probably one of the least embarrassing cases they'd ever dealt with. Smarter, richer guys than me have been quite literally caught with their pants down, and that alone was reason enough for some of them not to involve the law. The others were doing something legitimately incriminating. One of the detectives told me about a guy who was actually looking to prey on underage girls. One girl's father found out, blackmailed the guy until he hung himself because he couldn't pay anymore. Some might call that justice, but blackmail is illegal, no matter who the victim is. In the end, what it came down to was if I could survive whatever accusation this guy would make, there was a good chance that when his arrest got traced back to me, whatever material he was hanging over my head was going to get released. Legally, I was going to be fine, but as we know, it was the school board's judgment that really mattered. And sadly, this story doesn't have a happy ending. My blackmailer ended up getting arrested and a sort of sting set up to catch him, and I testified against him in court. But before I even got my day in court, every school in the district got a big brown envelope in the mail containing some heavily doctored images of my Plenty of Fish profile, the conversations with Lyra, and the predatory accusations that had milked almost $2,000 out of me. The detectives I spoke to were kind enough to contact the school board themselves, assuring me that the packages amounted to false evidence in the blackmail case. They were understanding. The kids' parents, however, they weren't so eager to accept the nuance of the situation. The school board tried to make my case, but it didn't matter. No smoke without fire was the general consensus, and I was given a choice by the school board: resign and move on, and I'd get a clean recommendation from them for my next teaching job, or stay and be forced out in a way that'd be a black mark on my record for the rest of my career. When they put it like that, there was no choice in it at all. I've tried to move on with my life, and in some ways, I've been very successful. But in others, I'm still very sorely lacking, hence why I'm writing all this down in the first place. Maybe one day I'll be able to shake off the trust issues that this Lyra gave me, and I'll be able to finally start dating, like I tried to so many years before. I'll always be scared. I'll always be anxious. But all I can hope is those feelings dampen over time until I can finally get rid of this cursed feeling and earn the love that I know in my heart that I deserve. If you enjoyed this scary story, listen to thousands more, either over on the Let's Read YouTube channel or podcast.